I'm Michael Popok. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel, and I'm at the intersection talking about a new loss for MAGA at a federal appellate court. This time, Jeff Clark, who was the acting attorney general for Donald Trump, helped him with the insurrection to burn down democracy in the waning days of the administration. He got indicted in Georgia, along with Mark Meadows, the last chief of staff for Donald Trump, but they don't like being in state court in Georgia, in Fulton County, in Atlanta. They want to be in federal court. So both of them have tried in different cases, but originally before the same trial court judge in the Northern District of Georgia in Atlanta tried to argue that we're federal officers and we have a federal, well, whatever we're being charged with is about our federal duties and our scope of our duties. And we have a federal defense. We should be in federal court. So the prosecutors would have to prosecute the case in federal court, and there'd be federal defenses raised over there because they're trying to get to the United States Supreme Court. When Mark Meadows tried this exact same trick, and he testified in an evidentiary hearing, a very embarrassing one for Mark Meadows in Georgia, in which he made it sound like all that the chief of staff does for a president is go run and get coffee and run the shredder and copy machine and try to interfere with the peaceful transfer of power, stuff like that. The Judge Jones there said, you are outside the scope of your authority, and I don't see you having a unique federal defense, so you're staying in state court. Mark Meadows didn't like that, so he went to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Jeff Clark, similarly, two peas in a pod here, was the acting attorney general. You may recall, or I'll tell you for the first time here, that Jeff Clark was also part of the immunity decision recently ruled upon last July by the United States Supreme Court, in which Donald Trump was given absolute immunity for his interactions with Jeff Clark, because they found that, the president talking to somebody who's his attorney general, that sounds like an absolute immune thing. So we're gonna give Donald Trump immunity from criminal prosecution related to his discussions with Jeff Clark. But that doesn't bail out Jeff Clark. Just because the president guy is immune doesn't mean you're immune. And so Jeff Clark tried to argue, I was a federal officer, I've got federal defenses, and everything I did was within the scope of my duties. And now here's where the rubber meets the road. Remember this name, Chief Judge William Pryor, Chief Judge of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and Judge Rosenbaum. They were involved in prior Trump cases. Usually the chief judge gets involved in those that came up from Florida in the Mar-a-Lago prosecution. And I'm not going to be shocked if they are the judges, at least William Pryor, the chief judge, who's going to decide whether Aileen Cannon properly dismissed the Mar-a-Lago 40-count indictment against Donald Trump because she likes Donald Trump and she wants to be the attorney general. But I jest. Because she found that the special prosecutor was improperly appointed under the Constitution. And they may decide that issue as well. And they already slapped her back twice and found that Cannon made reversible error in the way she interfered with the prosecution and investigation of Donald Trump the first time related to Mar-a-Lago. So that Judge William Pryor. He's also the judge a couple of months ago in Mark Meadows' case about transferring his case from state to federal court. We call it removal. He ruled, wait a minute, you're a former federal officer. I'm looking at the text of the statute because there's a statute that allows a federal officer within the course and scope of his federal powers to take a case to federal court if he's being criminally prosecuted, if he's got unique federal defenses. He says, we don't even get that. We don't even get to that. He told Meadows a couple of months ago. You're former. Formers can't use this statute. Goodbye. And that issue about whether a former person who's no longer a federal officer at the time he tries to invoke that provision is up before the United States Supreme Court with Mark Meadows. That's over here on the side. Put a pin in that. Now, while that has not yet been decided once and for all conclusively by the Supreme Court, Jeff Clark's trying the same thing. But he pulls the same judge, Judge Pryor, Chief Judge Pryor, along with Judge Rosenbaum and another judge who is a Trump appointee. And they decide 2-1 that Jeff Clark is going to lose and he's not going to be able to remove his Fulton County indictment because he is a former federal officer citing the Meadows case. See how we bring this right around? We square the circle. Judge Pryor said, I just ruled in the Meadows case on its almost exact facts that he was a former officer and he can't get the removal, and you can't get the removal provision working in your favor either. Denied. So now, and then you've got the Trumper of the 3-judge panel basically saying, I disagree with that. I don't think former federal officers is really where it's at. That's not the proper analysis. It's the first time in 200 years anybody's applied, and any court has ever said it only applies to current, not former federal officers. And so the United States Supreme Court is somehow going to get this case back. I think they're going to get it back first with Meadows. Right now, Jeff Clark lost. He's going to have to take his own appeal. I could see potentially a consolidation of the two appeals, Clark and Meadows, before this United States Supreme Court this term. They're coming back, the Supreme Court. They're not done with the Trump administration. They're not done with sticking their big fat noses and their big fat thumbs on the scales of justice about the president, the election, the voting, the Insurrection Act from last time. They're going to have to make a series of rulings. And if you want to follow all the ways the Supreme Court this term now is going to try to interfere and make rulings about this coming election, you can tune into Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and look at our new show called Unprecedented, which is about what else the United States Supreme Court. We're doing it once a week. I'm doing it with Dina Dahl right here on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. So that's where we're at. It's a little bit complicated. Let me give you a 30-second summary. Mark Meadows was a former federal officer. He tried to remove his case. The 11th Circuit's similar judges said, no, you're a former officer. You don't have the right to use the federal officer removal statute to take your state criminal case over to federal court. And he took that to the Supreme Court. While it's pending at the Supreme Court, you've got Jeff Clark, the acting attorney general, who says, me too. And the same, at least 2 of the 3 judges at the 11th Circuit said, yeah, and you're just like Meadows. So no, you're not taking your case either. You can go take your appeal. And those 2 appeals, I think, will travel together at the United States Supreme Court, who sometime in the back half of this term, that started a couple of weeks ago, are going to have to decide fundamentally whether the federal removal statute, officer removal statute, applies to former federal officers. And even if it applies, even if Meadows and Jeff Clark could use it, whether they were inside the scope of their duties when they participated in the conspiracy, and whether they have unique defenses, because they still have to get through those next 2 in order to properly remove. Otherwise, they're going to stay like any other garden variety, run-of-the-mill, co-conspirator, criminal defendant in Fulton County criminal court, just like anybody else. And if not, then the Supreme Court's going to rule you get to take it over under these circumstances to federal court, and we'll see what your federal defenses are at another time. I'm going to follow it all. Join me here, Legal AF, the new YouTube channel. Take a moment, free subscribe, hit that little blue subscription button, and I'll see you back here for Legal AF, the podcast, on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.